At dinner, Mom slid a white envelope across the table to my sister. Inside, $150,000 for her new house. Dad didn't hesitate. He simply looked at me and said, "You're the failure. We invest in winners." The room went silent. Forks froze. Smiles cracked. I didn't cry. I folded my napkin, stood up, and walked out. I never looked back. That night, I didn't beg for love or fairness. I started something they'd never see coming. When I was 12, I built a suspension bridge from wire and drinking straws for the state science fair. It held the weight of a textbook. I won first place. I remember standing on that gym stage and scanning the crowd for my parents. 2 empty seats in the front row. They were in Denver that weekend, cheering at my sister's beauty pageant. That night, I brought the metal bridge home, proud and glowing. Dad glanced at it once and turned up the TV. "Strange girl," he muttered. "What kind of daughter plays with machines?" Mom didn't answer. She stroked Jessica's hair and smiled as my sister held up her little Miss Sunshine trophy under the living room lights. That moment stuck like a splinter. It wasn't the words. It was the quiet after them. The quiet where love should have been taught as I grew up. I learned that love in my family came with receipts. Every favor, every gift, every smile depended on whether you made them look good. Jessica was their miracle child. She got the praise, the second chances, the excuses. I was the backup plan. I was supposed to be strong and need nothing. I worked nights to pay for college. They paid Jessica's tuition without blinking. I graduated with honors, found a job as a structural engineer, and sent them photos of my projects, bridges, apartment buildings, still frames cutting into the sky. The only reply from Dad was, "You still renting?" Every phone call turned into a stability report. Jessica's promotion, Jessica's engagement, Jessica's new car. They never asked how I was. They measured me against her shadow. Still, I kept hoping they'd see me as more than a failed investment. That hope finally cracked at dinner dot when Dad said, "We invest in winners." Something inside me shut off. I stopped chasing their approval. I stopped explaining myself. I learned the difference between silence that breaks you and silence that saves you. I packed up, left Colorado Springs, and headed back to Denver. No calls, no tears. Just the road, the hum of the tires, and a promise to myself if they wouldn't see my worth, I'd build it brick by brick until the whole world could. Losing my family was one kind of silence. Losing my job was another dot. It happened on a gray March morning. The company had been struggling for months, but I convinced myself I was safe. I worked late, hit deadlines, stayed late. When the director read the layoff list, my name was there, clean and final. I walked out into the snow with the termination letter crushed in my hand. The cold hit harder than I expected. For a moment, I stood on the sidewalk and wondered how many times in life you can rebuild from zero. That night, I sat in my apartment and stared at the faint reflection of city lights on the window. The silence inside was heavy. I opened the Bennett family group chat and saw their latest photo. Jessica in front of her new house, champagne in hand, our parents beaming beside her. The caption read, "So proud of our youngest daughter." I typed one last message. "Thank you for teaching me to stand on my own, even in the cruelest way possible." I hit send. Then I blocked their numbers, deleted the chat, and watched the screen go black. For the first time, there was no audience, no expectations. Just me. The fear came first. What if I fail again? What if they were right? But underneath the fear, something small stirred. Freedom. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I had no job and no plan, but I had a choice. I could either spend my days proving them wrong, or I could build a life that made their opinions irrelevant. I made coffee, opened my sketchbook, and drew a single line, the outline of a small house. I didn't know it then, But that line would become the first step of everything that came after. The first weeks blurred. Coffee gone cold. Rejection emails piling up. The city felt frozen. One afternoon, I found myself in a small cafe called Harlan's Corner. The place looked tired. Dim lights, chipped furniture, a smell of burnt espresso that lingered like regret. I sat at the back with my laptop when the owner, a man in his 60s with silver hair and paint-stained hands, came over. "You're Wendy Bennett, right?" "The engineer. Used to be," I said. "I could use someone like you. The cafe's falling apart, and I've got a few $1,000 left to fix it. Interested?" $1,000? I thought, not even enough to cover my rent. But something in his voice made me nod. "Yeah, I'm interested. For weeks I practically lived there." I repainted walls, rearranged furniture, rewired light fixtures, and redesigned the layout so the tiny cafe felt twice its size. I used reclaimed wood for the counter, hung pendant lights, and covered one wall with mirrors to pull in more light. When it was finished, Harlan stood in the middle of the room with glistening eyes. "It feels alive again," he said. "You've got magic in your hands, kid." A local magazine ran a small feature titled "A Forgotten Cafe Brought Back to Life by a Local Engineer." The next morning, my inbox exploded. People asked if I could redesign their small shops and homes. I didn't have a company, just a sketchbook and a few tools. But I said yes. One job led me west of Denver to renovate an old brick house for a retired veteran. There I met Ethan Walker. He was tall and broad-shouldered, sleeves rolled up, arms dusted with cement, eyes calm and gray like early winter. "You're the designer?" he asked. I nodded. "And you're the one making sure it doesn't collapse," he chuckled. "Then we'll get along fine." We did more than that. Ethan was steady, deliberate, patient. He made silence feel safe. We worked side by side for weeks, measuring beams, debating layouts, sketching on scraps of paper. Sometimes we didn't talk for hours. We moved in a quiet rhythm. One night, lying in bed, I replayed something he had said earlier. "You look at a house like it has a soul." Those words stayed with me. When the project ended, Ethan invited me to dinner near Sloan's Lake, over warm bread and red wine. We talked about buildings, fear, failure, and starting over. He didn't pity me. He said, "You don't need their approval. Wendy, you already built something they can't touch." It was the first time in years someone saw me, not the version my family dismissed, but the woman I'd fought to become. A few weeks later, he called with an idea. "Ever thought about designing a home that generates its own energy? A sustainable model, small and self-sufficient." That was the dream I buried. The one Dad had called too risky. "Yeah," I said. "I have." "Then maybe it's time," he said. We called it the Eco Home Project. Months later, we found a small plot of land in Oregon, 5 acres overlooking the ocean. The owner, George, was an older man with kind eyes and a quiet sadness. "I planned to build a home here once," he said, "but my wife passed before I could." He offered the land for $75,000. He lowered the price. Ethan covered the rest. "No strings," he said. "Just partnership." We set up a tent near the clearing. Every morning we brewed coffee on a portable stove, then worked until our hands blistered. We cleared stones, dug the foundation, and built by hand. I named it Evergreen Cabin, 600 square feet. Solar panels, rainwater collection, handcrafted wood from a dismantled barn. Everything sustainable. Everything built from what the world discarded. Just like me, some days I wanted to quit. My body ached. My fingers cracked from cold. But every night by the fire, I looked at the rising frame and thought, this is what it feels like to rebuild yourself. By month 10, the cabin stood complete. Pale wood. Wide windows, a porch that opened toward the sea. When the sunlight hit it just right, it seemed to have its own heartbeat. I took a single photo and posted it online with the caption, "Built this myself." By morning, the post had gone viral. People wrote, "You made me believe again. You turned pain into something beautiful." For the first time the world saw me the way I had always hoped my parents would dot it was a quiet May morning. Lavender bloomed along the porch when I heard tires screech on gravel. A silver BMW stopped at the gate. The door flew open. There she was, Jessica, perfectly styled but trembling. Her white dress caught the wind. "Dad, you need to come here now," she said into the phone. I stepped down from the porch, still holding my gardening gloves. "Jess, what's going on?" She froze when she saw me. Her eyes swept across the cabin, the solar panels, the wildflowers, the forest. "You live here?" she whispered. Her confidence slipped. For a moment she looked smaller, like the girl I used to protect from our parents' arguments. She ran her fingers over the cabin wall. "You have everything," she said. "And I don't even know who I am anymore." I didn't feel angry. I felt sad. We were both raised in the same house, taught opposite lessons. I was told to survive without love. She was told to depend on it completely. "Then stop living for them, Jess," I said gently. "Start living for you." She laughed shakily. "Easier said than done." We stood in silence until she murmured, "They're on their way." When the SUV arrived, I already knew how it would go. My father stepped out first, face flushed. Mom followed, trembling. "Where did you get the money for this?" Dad demanded. "You expect me to believe you built all this alone?" I set down my gloves, wiped my hands on my jeans, and met his eyes. "From the day you called me a failure," I said evenly, "I started collecting something you can never take, my work, my grit, my peace. This." I gestured at the cabin as what I built with it. Dad blinked, confused. Every insult, every comparison, it had been capital. This was the return on that investment. Mom's voice trembled. "We only wanted what was best for you," she said. I laughed softly, not from anger. "No, you wanted what made you look best." Dad's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, scanning the walls like he was searching for a flaw. "You did this to humiliate us?" he asked. "No," I said quietly. "I did it to survive you." The ocean whispered in the distance. Ethan stepped out, calm as always, wiping his hands with a rag. He nodded to my parents, then stood beside me. His steady, wordless support made something in my chest unclench. For the first time, I saw a flicker in my father's eyes. Not anger, not pride, but shame. "Did you do all this for revenge?" he asked finally. I shook my head. "Revenge would mean I still care what you think. I don't." Jessica stood to the side, tears on her cheeks. Dad's shoulders dropped. His voice washed thin as he said, "We were wrong." Mom began to cry quietly into her hands. They left soon after. The SUV disappeared down the gravel road, and the forest grew still again. I stood on the porch with my heart pounding, not from anger, but from release. Ethan draped his arm around me. "You okay?" he asked. For the first time, I said completely. A week later, a cream-colored envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was a letter and a photo of our old house with a for sale sign out front. His handwriting was careful. His words were unsteady. "We loved you in the wrong way," he wrote. "Through fear, through comparison. We're starting over. For the first time, we are proud of you." I didn't cry. I didn't write back. I walked outside where the air smelled of pine and rain and planted a young tree near the porch. I put down roots for a new beginning. Ethan stepped beside me and held a small walnut box he'd carved from the first tree we'd cut for the cabin. Inside was a simple wooden ring. "Wendy Bennett," he said quietly, "will you keep building with me?" I laughed through tears. Only if we draw the blueprint together, I said. That evening, as the sun slipped behind the trees, I wrote one final line in my journal. They gave her $150,000. They gave me silence. Silence became my foundation. Sometimes revenge isn't about making them pay. It's about letting them see you happy without needing their approval. My parents gave me silence, but that silence taught me everything about strength, boundaries, and peace. If you've ever been told you'll never make it, I hope my story reminds you that you can build a life from the ground up, one no one can take away. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? If this story hit home, hit subscribe, share it, and stay for the next one. You're not alone.